Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad. When you were a kid, you must have been, I think, 4. We bought a different house, and we wanted to emphasize to you, this is our new house. Look how nice everything is. And we wanted to make sure you treat it like something new and nice, like a new Christmas present. And we knew how well you took care of your presents. You weren't a person that wrecked them. You always kept them really nice. So I took you into the house before we moved in. I said, Raya, you don't want to do anything to make this look bad. Don't ever draw on the walls with crayons. And I took you over to one little section of the wall, and I said, see how nice this wall is right here? Don't draw on the wall with crayons. Well, the next day, I discovered...
I've got a good idea.
Yeah.
You know what I could do?
Yes.
I could draw on the wall with crayons.
Yeah, and where did you do it? Right
where
where
you
I
pointed.
told you not to do it. I wanted what was best for this house. I learned a valuable lesson there. You can't tell a 4-year-old that. It doesn't quite work out.
We've got more to say about that after this. Last week, you and I were talking about finding common ground when we are talking with people that we might have some differences with. And after you and I finished recording that, you said, one piece that we could really bring out, because we're always going to have common ground about the fact that we both want what's best for you. And you and I thought that would be good to explore that. But as you and I were talking about this a bit more, what that means about we both want what's best for you, depending on how you position that, can either be a really good thing and really positive for the relationship, or it can end up not quite meaning what you think it's going to mean.
And it depends on how each person is thinking about it. As I say, as the father, I say to you, I only want what's best for you, is different from we both want what's best for you.
When you're having disagreements with a child in particular, you have the parent that has more life experience. So even if the child is out of the house and is no longer under your authority, there's still the sense that you're the parent. That relationship will never entirely go away. There will always be the sense that the parent has the life experience, the parent has the mentorship role, so that continues on forever. And there's times where that's good. When I'm coming to you seeking advice, saying, help me out, I really need you. I need your advice on how to do things. That's the good time. But then there's times where the parent comes, and we've all done this. You've done this, and I've done this as a parent, and every parent has always done this, where you offer unwanted advice, and it's under this blanket of, I only want what's best for you. But it's not always best for you, is it?
No, that's right. And it's because I would be saying, I want what's best for you, as opposed to common ground. We want what's best for you. We would both agree on that. We both want what's best for you. But the difference is, you see what's best for you differently than I might see what's best for you. So maybe I don't even realize it, but what I'm saying is, I want what I think is best for you because it's best for me. You remember the movie Dead Poets Society? If you haven't seen that movie, I recommend it. It starred Robin Williams, but it wasn't a comedy. In that show, one of the students, at that point, Robin Williams is a professor at the university. It's where the expression came from that everybody uses now, carpe diem.
Seize the day.
That's where that came from, that movie. Although it goes back about 2,000 years or more. Anyway, one of the students was really overwhelmed by what his father wanted for him. And he didn't want to do anything to jeopardize that. So he did everything his father expected of him. And it's what the father wanted. It was never what the son wanted. Ultimately, toward the end of this movie, he displeases his father and he kills himself. It's tough. He takes his own life. And it's because the same situation, the father saying, I want what's best for you, meaning I want what's best for me because that will be best for you. Well, not necessarily. Everybody has a different perspective on what's best for them. And we've heard it said so many times, it's my life. And the person who is telling you what's best for you doesn't necessarily keep that in mind.
It's hard to know because the parent has a perspective and a wisdom that the child necessarily can't have. And so it's hard to know, is the parent really giving wisdom right now, or is the parent in this case really saying something that doesn't make a lot of sense? For instance, if I'm having my child take piano lessons, and I think this is really going to benefit you, you're going to be really happy that you take piano lessons. So I know you're not happy about it right now, but believe me, when you are in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and you're able to have this life skill, you're going to thank me. But that's not always the case, is it?
Absolutely not. When I was 6 years old, my mother decided I'm going to learn how to play the accordion. Now, when I was 6 years old, back in 1950, accordion was a really popular instrument. And it was pretty popular in the 60s and 70s too, but by the 80s, it started to be less popular. She thought I should play the accordion. Now, and she chose that instrument for me, and we went to the School of Music in downtown area. The teacher there said, well, what instrument would you be interested in? And my mother said he wants to play the accordion. I didn't want to play the accordion. I never wanted to play the accordion, but I did. And I started out with a little 12-fingered bass, and I played it, and I did it well enough that I could do a song, and my mother was really proud of me. We went up to see my aunts and uncles who lived about 150 miles away from us, and they brought the accordion along so I could do a solo on my accordion, and they all clapped and said, oh. I still didn't want to play the accordion. By the end of that summer, I remember telling my mother, I don't want to play the accordion anymore. And she tried to talk me into it. We went back to the professor of music, and he said, oh, he has such talent. You shouldn't let him drop this. Yeah, the mistake was, if they would let me choose my own instrument, I might have chosen guitar. I might have chosen keyboard. I don't know. But I wouldn't have chosen the accordion. And so I think she thought what was best for me is that I'd be so happy because I'd be able to play that accordion. Well, I'm a lot happier that I didn't play it.
And later on in life, you went on to learn guitar.
Yes, but I was self-taught.
That was self-taught. And then I did the same. And now some of my kids have gone on and done the same, either a guitar or at least a few of the kids now are playing ukulele. When you find the piece that connects with you, then it really is what's best for you.
Yes, that's right.
But if you're not finding the piece that connects with the one, when you're saying, I want what's best for you, if you're not both agreed on what's best for you, you're going to have a real hard time. You can't push somebody in. You can't make somebody want what you want by just sort of gritting your teeth and saying, we're going to make you do the thing. That will work a little bit until it doesn't work. And finally they push back and say, forget it. I'm not going to do this anymore.
And you've seen that happen many times in very well-known people and what they were chosen to do or what they have been asked to do, been required to do. And it comes out a little bit differently. Usually when the phrase, I only want what's best for you, is used, it's a to convey care or concern and good intentions toward the other person. I want what's best for you. And usually, I think people mean that from the heart. And it usually implies that whoever's saying it really does have the other person's well-being and happiness as their primary goal. But in the context of the relationship between one and the other, there's a few different interpretations about that. That's where the difference comes in.
I would say that just tweaking that wording a little bit, we oftentimes will come in with our own perspective, thinking, I really do only want what's best for you, and I'm working so hard, and you don't know what to do, and you're struggling with the relationship. And you end up saying the wrong thing, and you're trying so hard to say the right thing. And the harder you try to say the right thing, the more you end up saying the wrong thing. And just tweaking the wording here even a little bit. From I only want what's best for you, if you change it to we both want what's best for you, that changes your mindset and their mindset about what you're trying to say. Because if you start with the idea of we want what's best for you, then let's you and I discuss together, what does it really mean to be best for you? And can we agree? Can we probe a little bit about, can we find the agreement that what you and I both agree is best for you? And then let's build out from there, rather than me coming in as a dictator and saying, you don't know what's best for you. Let me tell you what's best for you.
And the reason we're bringing this up on this podcast is that I suspect so many of our listeners out there have heard this many times. If they first come out at the very beginning, you come out and say, "Dad, I'm gay," or I'm bisexual, or I'm going to be transgender or something, and they come back and say, "I want what's best for you," what they mean is, I want you to be what I think is best for you. And what's best for you is not going to be this, because it's going to open up real problems for you in the future. That's why I think you're going to hear this sometimes, and you want to look at it from a different perspective.
This last weekend, you and Mom came over and helped me out with the house, and I was very grateful for the help that you gave me. And you helped me put a door back on that the hinges were having problems on, and I did manage to get that door closed after all, which was very exciting. And we painted some. I got one of the rooms painted, and Mom came over and did a bunch of the dishes, and you guys were very, very helpful to me. But you also did something, and you and I have talked about this as well before this show started, but you did something that you didn't realize that you were doing that we all are inclined to do. And that is, you saw one thing and you said, you know what you ought to do? And I said, what should I do? And you gave me an idea of a thing. And then about 2 minutes later, you said, hey, you know what you ought to do? And you gave me another thing. And I said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And a few minutes later, you gave me another thing and another thing and another thing. And after about a half hour of, you know what you ought to do, I thought, this is a lot of you know what you ought to do. And they were not bad things, but it felt like, oh my goodness, this is already overwhelming. Those were all good things to do, but this idea of I only want what's best for you, even when you really do want what's best, it can very easily turn into a to-do list and a burden when the person already knows full well where they need to go. And none of what you told me was bad advice, but it was, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. I think there were 400. You know what you ought to do is
there probably was.
And because there are a lot of you know what you ought to do.
Well, part of the reason I said that is I realize when you start a new job, or when you move into a new house, or when you change jobs, or you do anything different, you see something from a brand new perspective. After about 6 months, all those things you saw that ought to be done I've kind of forgotten.
You do kind of forget those.
That's why when you first come into a situation, if you make a list of what you think is wrong about that situation, and you come back to it 6 months later, you'll say, oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's the reason for it. Now, you see what I'm saying? I'm saying I want you to understand why I thought that was a good idea to come off. And I also often preface it by saying, sometime you
But it just demonstrates the difference between it's oftentimes just a small little difference between we both want what's best for you. Let's find our agreement.
Yeah.
And I want what's best for you in a way that's really off-putting. And you and I have a very good relationship. This was no big deal at all.
Of course not.
But when things are difficult, it gets a little harder because it can very easily turn into that unsolicited advice. And the person thinks, I'm not asking for your advice right now. Let me make my own mistakes. Let me go my own way. And then I'll discover what works for me, because what you think is the best thing for me might turn out to be accordion playing. And I didn't need that after all. But what you think is best for me might turn out to be, hey, I really think it's best for you if you can quit smoking, because that's not going to be good for you. But that one is objectively true. I think we can all agree that I want you to quit smoking is always going to be a good thing. I suppose you could come up with some counterexample somewhere. And then I think you really ought to keep playing accordion. You're going to hate it right now, but someday you're going to thank me. And no, there never would have been a day where you would have thanked her. It's hard to tell sometimes. When is that unsolicited advice good advice and when is it bad advice? And the only way to know is to say, I'm going to play it easy. I'm going to come in and just see, I'm going to feel out where are we at together, find that common ground, and make sure that any advice that I'm giving is always offered as a part of what you and I both agree that we always want together.
So, if what you're saying is find that common ground. That is where we start. When it first comes out, I want what's best for you. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's best for me that we both agree on. What do we both agree on is best for me? Do we both agree that what's best for me is that I shouldn't come out of the closet? Is that what's best for me? Well, that's not something we agree on, but where do we find the common ground to start?
Well, what could we find in a situation like that, where one of us thinks that coming out of the closet is the best thing you can do, and the other one thinks it's a bad thing? Well, if you ask yourself why do you think that coming out of the closet is a good thing? Why do you think that not coming out of the closet is a good thing? Well, maybe my why is, what are people going to think about you? Maybe my why is because I'm sick of living with this burden on me. And until you get to the why underneath it, you kind of assume that each of you knows and understands, but you don't. You don't know. You have no idea. For the person that's not living in a closet, has no idea how difficult it can be to try to carry the burden of keeping who you are a secret.
Okay,
until you finally come out.
Let me play devil's advocate here. So that's what you think is going to find common ground for us? I don't think so. You know what I think is going to find common ground for us? We have a good relationship. Let's preserve it. That's where I want to start. I want to start with, can we agree on that? We don't want to do that. So I think from my perspective, help me understand why you think this is best for you. And tell me where I'm wrong in thinking it's not. Where that's, I think, a great way to approach it. What do you think?
I think so. And here again, I think the difference in wording is really important. I like what you said there about help me understand that you are approaching with an attitude of giving rather than of taking.
Yes.
You're not trying to put demands on the other person. Too often we've seen it where this becomes manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we both care about the relationship? And if you really cared about the relationship, you would do what I'm asking you to do. And the fact that you're not doing it is showing that you don't really care. No, that's not the kind of common ground that we're looking for. We're looking for the common ground that says, hey, you know what? We both really care about one another. And so I'm going to start by giving to you. You know, I think of that Beatles song, We Can Work It Out. And it's so funny how in that song, you know, you think when you're just playing it and you're just kind of thinking, but you're not thinking too hard about the lyrics. It seems like it's a song about, hey, let's negotiate and we can find some middle ground. But when you really listen to the words, what is he actually saying?
He says, try to see it my way.
Right. Only time will tell if I'm right or I'm
if
wrong.
I am right
Yeah.
or wrong. So we're going to do my way
Right.
first, and then we'll find out if I'm right or wrong.
He does not say anything about, we could maybe try it your way.
Exactly.
Forget it. No,
Wanna
why don't
see
you
it
just...
want to see it your way? We might fall apart before too long.
And too often, that's where we approach in relationships. Hey, come on, we can work it out. We both care about the relationship, so do it my way.
Yeah.
No, it starts by saying, we both care about the relationship, and therefore, I'm going to give.
Yes.
I'm going to give you my attention, and I'm not going to start by trying to cram my viewpoint down your throat. I'm going to sit down and listen to your viewpoint and say, help me understand for you what's important to you.
Yes. Well, what's important to me is it's going to hurt my standing in the community, because I'm going to have to go out and tell people that I've got a transgender daughter. That's going to be tough for me. Can you understand that? We're role playing here, guys.
It's a hard one to admit to yourself. Even you have talked about this a lot.
Yes,
how
I
difficult
have.
this was
On the
for
early
you,
podcast. Yes.
and you didn't realize it, and you were not happy about it. You didn't like what you saw in yourself, and I didn't even know about it. It wasn't until you and I started these podcasts that I realized it, and I'm very grateful for that. That you never came to me and said, you know, your transition is really causing some problems in my life.
Yes.
I'm grateful that you never did that.
Yeah. And then you'll realize now, after 7 years, I take you to one of the organizations that I am most proud of. And I show you off. I'm proud of you. I stand up there and say, here we are together talking about the podcast that we do. I couldn't be prouder. That's a wonderful thing. And then what had happened? I walked away, and so many of my friends came up to me and afterward and said, wow, that was really great. I really admire you for doing X and Y and Z. And I thought that was terrific. So the message here, your relationship may be the same way. So have you got a son or daughter that's in a situation like that? Try to find common ground and try to understand from their perspective. And then share with them your perspective. And little bit at a time, it becomes easier and easier until you turn the corner and it becomes equal. And then by the end, you're proud of the person. You're proud of them. It's wonderful. And it works out really great.
When we're talking about, I only want what's best for you, and there is a disagreement, it comes down to differences in perspectives, because what one person believes is best, and we put that in quotes, may not align with what that person's own desires and values really are. So in such cases, those conflicts can arise due to differing perspectives on what constitutes the best course of action. And we have to agree to disagree in those situations. And there are times where you as the parent are saying, yeah, but I think I really do know what's best for you. And you still have to let it go and say, well, you're going to have to live your own life and make your own mistakes. And I will do my best to support you. And you do that because you want to keep the relationship.
I'm thinking of the movie Billy Elliot. In that movie, he wanted to be a dancer. He was good at it. It was his talent. He was meant to do that. He could tell that was the situation. But parents didn't agree, and it made it a really difficult situation. It's a powerful movie. I remember also a skater that was one of the people in the Olympics that was one of the champions in there. And his father was unhappy that he wasn't playing football. He was skating. He didn't see that as a real sport. The announcers continued to talk about it throughout the entire Olympics. And that was probably 12, 14 years ago, 16 years ago. Anyway, it's the same situation. Each of us has our own talents. Each of us have our own gifts. Each of us have our own perspectives on what our life is like and what's going to be best for us. Just because a father might be a doctor doesn't mean that that same thing is going to happen to the daughter or the son. That's not necessarily the way it works. Just because the father is a great violinist doesn't mean that the son will be. Sometimes it works out that way, and that's great. And sometimes it works out that the person who ends up being the great violinist is the child, and the father was a laborer, a common laborer, and wanted to bring the child in to work at the factory to be what he was. Instead, he became a concert violinist or whatever. That's how things are in life, and we need to look at everyone should follow their dream. When you follow your dream, you're going to be a happier person. Yet, if my dream is that you should make as much money as possible, and I can tell you how to do it, maybe you don't even care about that. Your dream is something completely different. And I know a lot of people who are very well off. They've done very well for themselves financially. And I know a lot of those people who are very unhappy.
And this is not just thoughts of, this is how we think it should be. No, they've actually done scientific studies where they've looked, once your basic needs are met, where you don't have to worry about where your next meal is going to come from or how you're going to keep the power on, how you're going to pay the rent. There is no correlation between how much money you have and how happy you are. None. Not even a little bit. There's not like, oh, well, they discover that the more money you have, you're a little more. There is no correlation at all. Either way. Money doesn't make you happier. Money doesn't make you sadder. Money doesn't anything. Money is a tool just like anything else. And if you are pushing your child towards, I want to make more money, you may be the person that's saying, I really think you ought to stick with that accordion because I know what's best for you.
Yes, if you're pushing your child to be what you think they should be, you may be able to do that. And you might end up with an unhappy child. It doesn't always work that way. Let them be what they want to be. So if you want to be a frogman, go ahead. Why would I stop you from that? Remember when you went to a national convention, a youth national convention, and you heard a person speak by the name of Tony Campolo, and he said, if you decide you wanted to get into becoming a pastor, who's going to give you the most objections? Your parents. They're the ones that would be the most likely to say, oh, no, you don't want to do that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but that seems consistent with what I would expect him to say. In how many times do you hear the person that has gone on to be a success that said, my parents told me, put that stupid guitar down and go get a real job?
Yes, that's right.
So we want to do everything we can to preserve our relationships, to keep our relationships strong. And we hope that we've been your voice of positivity as you're seeking to do that, whether you have an LGBTQ loved one in your life or you are the LGBTQ loved one and you have other loved ones, allies or non-allies. We want to preserve those relationships, and we hope we've inspired you to do just a little bit more of that this week.
It's going to be a great week this week. We'll see you Monday.